ask Sarah if she can hear.
Sarah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that was for everything I said. Need to start over? I'll start over. Good morning. Sorry for that little bit of technology glitch there. So what I was describing, first of all, is that this agenda is posted as a special meeting. The reason for that is because on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, our county was privileged to host our congressman for a couple of days of interaction and personal visit. And because that was what worked for his calendar, we moved our calendar. So when we move a regular meeting, that it now is posted as a special meeting. As such, we should technically only take public comment on those items that are posted on the agenda. But that's not how we really view this agenda. We view it as a regular meeting that had to get moved. So we are going to take public comment on all items pertinent to matters of this board. And just to know that if and when special meetings happen in the future, the typical protocol will likely be followed. That public comment would only be for items on that agenda. The next item I had mentioned, as you can tell, we have a little bit of trouble with our IT this morning. And right now, if you're outside the county server, you would not be able to log on and capture the Zoom login information. We are going to go ahead and proceed as RT is working to remedy that issue with our presentations. If we get to the point where we're conducting county business, we will check with IT and make sure that that has been resolved. With that, we will move into our presentations. Item 1.1, receive an update from U.S. Forest Service representatives regarding matters of interest in Trinity County. And with us today, we have our detail Deputy District Ranger, Ben Sundahl. Ben, thank you for joining us. Good to see you.
Okay. Good morning. So I'm just going to give a quick. Is that me? I'll stand back.
Not sure.
Shasta Trinity work on the South Fork Management Unit and the Trinity River Management Unit. This should be pretty short since we have switched when we present. So there was only like about a 2-week gap to give you guys an update here. So to start out with, we'll go into fire and fuels management. So a few days ago, we had the Buckeye Fire out by Carville. Great response by Fed Resources, our contractors. We were able to hold that fire at a 1/4 acre. Cause is still to be investigated.
It's not here. It's not here.
It's not me? Okay. I'm determined this time. Our staffed, are currently staffed. We do have one engine in Canada, a trip of a lifetime. So great job by those folks. But we do have a lot of other federal agency engines, contractors helping support and supplement our staffing here on the west side of the Shasta National Forest. So our capabilities have not diminished as of now. Things continue to dry out. So we'll see what happens as we move into August, September. Usually August, September are our core 2 months of fire season on the Shasta Trinity National Forest. So knock on wood, it stays quiet. But historically, those are our 2 busiest months. The augmented staffing, the cover resources that we are bringing in, they are not only helping us with suppression efforts, they are also helping out with fuels management efforts. So they are out there building piles, doing some fuels mitigation work around some of our admin sites and roads. So they're just not sitting, they're actually out working and helping us accomplish our goals. On fuels, the Trinity IRSC project was awarded. This will result in approximately 4,000 acres of fuels reduction treatment and removal of over 70,000 tons of fuels in the form of dead and small trees from the forest. We are also moving forward with efforts to get our fuels crew hired, which is currently in process. So that 10-person crew will be dedicated to the west side to accomplish fuels management work, not only for prep, but also implementation of prescribed fire, whether it's pile burning or understory burning in the future. So fingers crossed that 10-person crew can get fully filled over the next couple of weeks, and they are onboarded and in place early winter of 2023. So mechanized fuels reduction work will occur in the Weaverville Community Forest this summer, and additional work up near Goldfield Campground, Scott Flat, and Forest Glen areas. Manual work will occur on the Kellogg Fuel Break, a portion of the pilot project, and other roadside areas across the west side. Planning and layout efforts continue on the Barham Fuels Reduction Project between us and I think it's the Watershed, third-party NEPA. So we're working with our partners on that one as well. Timber, the Pettyjohn project is expected to be logged this summer. The Gemmel project is expected to be completed this summer. Work is also underway at the pilot project. They're getting ready for contracting or have contracting by the end of October. The contract will cover approximately 4,000 acres. And we are currently working on awarding a service contract for common stand exams across the Big Ranch project. And Big Ranch is the big, large landscape project that kind of incorporates Burnt Ranch over the crest down into High and Palm in that area. And then it bleeds over into the Six Rivers National Forest. So it's a joint effort between us and the Six Rivers and our partners. Around planning, the High and Palm community risk reduction continues to be refined based on public input and comments received from the original scoping. We will have a public field trip during the scoping period and request public comments. The request for public comments will be in the Trinity Journal. We continue to work with community members and the Watershed Center to plan a post-fire treatment in the Junction City area. And we've had discussions on that and a great discussion around that at the open house we had at Junction City a month or so ago. Fisheries, it was hard to get an update for fish. Eric's been in the field doing snorkel surveys over the last week. So a quick update on that is the Spring Run project placed 200 logs in the Salt Fork with root wads attached to many of the trees to improve river conditions for fish habitat. But due to the wet winter and spring, the flows of the Trinity River were high and moved the logs. The movement was not unexpected. However, due to the high river flows, we do have staff out evaluating the current conditions of those logs and the river conditions. So I'd expect a more thorough update on that when we can, get a hold of Eric when he comes back from the field and provide that at the next meeting. So we got through all our post-spring, early summer open houses. We are soon to start, we will soon identify dates for our fall open houses where we'll give the public and anybody who wants to attend updates on summer projects, summer work, summer activities. So keep an eye out for those fall open house dates to be published here soon. Shared stewardship, we're working closely with the Six Rivers National Forest to successfully implement treatments on the Trinity County landscape that reduce risk to our communities and improve forest resilience. So that's going well. Great across the border relationship building and cohesion as we work together to make the forest more resilient and protect our local communities from wildfire. Recreation, the sweepstakes trail ribbon cutting ceremony was a few weekends ago. Huge success. I was part of that along with Mike McFadden. We were able to cut the ribbon with our local partners, the Trinity Trail Alliance, Reading Trail Alliance, RCD, Watershed. They were all up there. Great turnout, large group of mountain bikers. We were able to do shuttles up and down the mountain to give folks the opportunity to go downhill and experience that trail. So huge thanks to the community and our partners for all the hard work to build that trail, and then the support from the community for us to work with our partners to get that trail in place. I had the privilege to ride that trail down after the ribbon cutting, and it's a pretty amazing trail. Lots of good mountain bike trails in the Weaverville community. So great to see that one open. We are working on moving a Philpott campground, which I believe is a day use campground right now, back to normal campground status. So we'll move that into campground status here shortly out of that day use status. And then we anticipate getting the Burnt Ranch campground open soon. There's just a few hazard trees from what I know that still need to be felled. And if we can't remove those hazard trees, we might just scale back the available sites.
Hmm.
Hiring. So it seems like we are in a continuous cycle of hiring. The agency has many large-scale hiring events. It seems like monthly. As new hiring events surface on our radar and open in USA Jobs, we will continue to plan on hosting open houses at Weaverville and Hayfork to allow applicants or prospective applicants to come in, talk about the jobs available, and we'll have staff on board to help them with the USA Jobs application process, because it can be somewhat difficult if you're not familiar with it. So yeah, huge success with that, with meeting and greeting folks around the community, with the hopes of seeing some increased applicants from the local community. So more to come on that as we see more hiring events surface in the future. And then yesterday, some of us were able to attend the congressional visit. So a great turnout by the Board of Supervisors, Heidi, Trent, and then from the Trinity National Forest and the Six Rivers National Forest, and then a few of our partners. We were able to see some of the work in that Burnt Ranch, Sallier area, work that is proposed to be accomplished and mitigated, and then some of the work that has been done to get that contrast of what an unhealthy forest looks like and how we can make it more resilient and more defensible for the local communities, to what an after product looks like with the piles being built that will just need to be burned in the wetter months, and just the open landscape of the trees and the density stands and stuff like that. So I think it was a well attended, liked field trip, and so yeah, a lot of positive discussions, and it was just a great day to be outside. It was nice, a little cooler on the Six Rivers side with that that coastal breeze, so it was great. With that, that's the end of the report I have for the South Fork and Trinity River Management Units.
All right, thank you for that. Questions?
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. When Eric Wiseman's done with his diving surveys, especially on the South Fork, could you get me some numbers on that?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, will do.
And Ben, I just had a couple. One was, you mentioned the staffing, and I know we're still trying to get more and more people on, but am I right that we're already staffed up much more than we've been in the past because you got funding for so many additional positions? Am I taking that in right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we have quite a few new employees on board. We continue to bring new employees on board, and we're quickly running out of office space. So, which is a good thing. So more employees coming on board. The goal is to get those employees out into the field for these landscape projects, which historically we have not seen to this scale in Trinity County. So much larger footprint on the landscape means more bodies in the woods. So we'll be able to get those surveys done and that planning done to go back and then implement the work. So yes.
Great.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, I was a little distracted because someone was reaching out about the Zoom link and stuff. So I was getting them updated. But did you talk at all about the event that you held over here at the CD Hall recently?
Partners Barbecue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a very successful Partners Barbecue a few Fridays ago. Very well attended. I think we set 180 chairs out, and I think we got close to filling all 180 chairs. So I'm guessing around 150 people between, our partners, local community, Trinity, Six Rivers came over. It overall was just a really well attended event, and a huge thanks to Mike McFadden and his staff who did all the barbecuing. It was just it was awesome to see an event like that so well attended by such a diverse group of people that have a common vision and goal of the work we need to accomplish in Trinity County. So it was really great to see that.
That's great. And I was sorry I had to leave before you got to the part where you were going to kind of be talking to the group, but I did enjoy the food. Thank you.
Yep.
But thank you for putting that on. And I'm glad you were able to get so many people there to talk about how we are working together.
Yeah, it was great. And we'll be planning one again for 2024, and we'll smooth out the rough edges. So really appreciate your time.
So if anything, I just want to mention that that was not funded by Forest Service funds. For anyone in the public who may be wondering, that's not something they wanted to publicize. It kind of looks like you're trying to shine a spotlight on yourself, but that was definitely a vision of our forest supervisor and district ranger. And it was really an incredible collaborative, such a positive event. And I had some great pictures I was going to share this morning of folks serving and speaking on the stage, but technology won't allow that to transfer through right now. But thank you, and certainly pass our continued thanks on to all those who participated and helped. So
Will do.
appreciate it. All right. Well,
Thank you, Ben.
there are no other
Thank you.
questions. Thanks for your time. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
Take care.
Thank you. All right, item 1.2, planning and zoning. Receive a presentation from Mentor Harnish on the vision and guiding principles portion of the general plan update. With us in person this morning, we have Jim Harnish and Brent Gibbons. Thanks for making the trip and being here with us. Looking forward to this discussion.
So I'll give a quick little intro here for Brett and Jim. So just for the public awareness. So consultants from Mentor Harnish are here this morning to provide an update on the general plan. This is a multi-year project. They have been steadily making progress as we move forward through the phases outlined on the general plan website, Trinity2050.com. That's Trinity2050.com. The draft background report, draft vision and guiding principles document, and community mapping survey are all available on the website now for review, comment, or action. Remember, when you go to Trinity2050.com to click on the orange button on the right side of the page to join the email list for general plan updates, or click the green button just below the orange one to submit a comment. The general plan is probably the single most important document we have as a county, as it will steer land use planning decisions for many years to come. We need as many county residents involved as possible, and I encourage residents to visit the website and participate. The goal is to have everyone's voice heard. And with that, Brett and Jim, take us away.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure, do you have the presentation on hand, or is that available?
Yeah.
Yep. Pull it up. Perfect. Good morning, board. Good to see you again. It's been a while. You can believe it's almost been a year. So last November was the last time that we came before you to give a formal update. We had some focus group meetings just earlier this summer. So we're back again and moving forward. So I just want to give you an introduction to why we're here today, go through the process of where we've been, comments received, deliverables so far, and then I'll hand it over to Jim Harnish, who's the principal and owner, and he'll walk through, I would say, which is one of the most critical exercises of this process, that we're going to take feedback from you, the board, tonight from the Planning Commission, and then Jim will circle back about how we get those comments and finalize them from there. So next slide. And click again. We can do it one more time. And you can do it again.
And just to clarify, and
Sure.
you kind of specified or mentioned that you're looking for comments and the comments tonight.
Correct.
And then this is not so much a decision here, it's input, and then later there is a decision?
100% correct. Yes. So there's no action this morning. It's feedback, expectations. I like to call it a big wordsmithing exercise. We'll talk to the Planning Commission tonight, gather their feedback, let them know what the board said, and then formalize ones for final review by the board. And Jim will touch on that later in the presentation. On the screen in front of you, this should look very familiar. We've been showing this for the past two plus years. This is the project process. Everything that's highlighted in green, phases 1, 3, 4, and 5 are either complete or they're in process. You'll notice that phase 2, that's in yellow. Phase 2 was the first portion of our zoning amendment process. Now, through this project so far with Trinity County, there was the push to have the community plans raised through the process, and this was driven by community feedback, and then eventually the board taking action on that feedback. Because that part of the process has risen What we've worked with county staff is taking that phase 2, which is the zoning ordinance amendments, and moving that further down the project when we actually do the comprehensive update. So we can give full focus to the community plans, which is what the community was yearning for, where most of our comments came in as part of this project. Currently, we're in phase 4 and phase 5. So we're in between. We're working on the community vision for the countywide as a whole, and then eventually the community plans will have their visioning process. But we're also working on the community plan process, which has been going on since November of last year. So just as Trent had talked about, there is the existing conditions and trends workbook, which is available online. It's been available for public review. We have received public comments and suggestions on modifications to the report just for ease of use, clarifications on certain facts or statements within there, and other areas that the community felt we should expand upon. We're currently coordinating with the county planning staff on how to address those comments and then update the document. That document serves as the existing setting for the entire project. If you think about it, when you go to write policy for the county, that'll eventually make its way before you, the board, you need to have an understanding of where the county is today. Without that, you can't write policy. So this is the foundational document that tees up all other portions of the general plan and eventually the environmental impact report, which is done through phase 8 of this project. So that the existing conditions and trends background report is available on Trinity 2050. It'll be there for the duration of the project. You can submit comments on it throughout, but at some point we got to close that window and move on to other phases of the project.
Can I ask you something while we're here? Sorry,
Sure.
I'll lose it if I wait till later.
No problem.
One of the things I think I heard in a much earlier meeting was that towards the end of all this process, when we know what we want to be when we grow up and it's reflected in this plan, that it would also include the potential for streamlining of ordinances that allow us to achieve what we put forward into the plan. So not just here are the zones and what that means of what you can and can't do, but actually getting into the ordinances that are used to build things and to, am I right that is also part of this, or is it not?
Correct. You are correct. It's a twofold process. So
Okay.
the EIR is a programmatic EIR, which allows the streamlining of projects to move through. So that's part of the mitigation monitoring programs, part of the analysis of the overall general plan and any development that arises from it. Through the comprehensive portion of the zoning code update, we are going to evaluate and look at all of your processes as they relate to zoning and development and streamline process, cut red tape, move things forward through there. So there's a two-part process.
Who were named.
All right. Okay, and I have a text that folks online can hear and see us. So, all right. Apologize for the interruption, gentlemen, to find your train of thought and pick up and move forward. Why don't you do a quick recap? Grab folks and pull them forward on those items that you would like to, and then we'll move forward from there. All right. Thank you.
What we can do is start with the slide that shows the project process. Let's go
The one
forward.
with the circle.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So good morning, board, back again. And for those of you on Zoom who are not able to catch the first portion of this presentation, I'll give a brief on the slide that's in front of you. This is the project process for the Trinity County 2050 general plan. This runs through all 9 phases of the project. You will notice that there are 4 bubbles that are in green. Those green bubbles mean that either that phase is complete or is currently in process. So we're between phases 4 and phase 5 right now. Phase 3 says existing conditions and trends. That includes one of our first deliverables, which was the existing conditions and trends background report. that's currently available on the Trinity 2050 website. We've received several comments on that so far with recommended changes from community members based on different chapters and sections. That plan will serve as the foundation for the policy document, which is your general plan goals and policies as part of phase 6 moving forward. It'll also lend help with today's discussion on the vision and guiding principles for the county, and then eventually for each of the community plans. And lastly, for the environmental impact report as part of phase 8. Phase 2, you notice up there is yellow. We're shifting phase 2 all the way to phase 7 and combining that effort into the comprehensive plan update. That's to allow more time and preparation for the community plans, which was a new portion of our scope added last year based on community feedback and then board direction to include that component as part of this effort. So I do want to touch on really where the community vision right now has gone, where it's heading, and talk briefly about the other phases and what to anticipate first before we go to the next slide. So we started focus groups at the beginning of this project. If you look on this chart here, it's the orange arrow behind the bubbles that moves along. Think of the focus group as a sounding board. Our team reports to the focus group on deliverables, takes initial feedback before it makes its way out for public review, and then eventually to the Planning Commission and the board. Back in June, the focus groups met to provide initial feedback on concepts, revision, and guiding principles, which Jim will touch on. And that's brought us here today, and that's what will be before you. This vision guiding principles is countywide. Our next step following this is to now take it down to the next level, which are community plan visions. But in order to get to community plan visions, we then need to decide which are the communities that are getting community plans. So as part of this process last November in 2022, we held 10 workshops over 5 days across the county, 2 a night in 10 communities. Several of those communities have existing community plans, 20 plus years old, most of them. And some of these areas do not have community plans. And what we did is we gauged the communities, each of them individually, on if there was a community plan, what would you like to see? What are some of the issues? What are some of the opportunities that the 2050 general plan can capture as part of this effort? And really to report out what the board had done by having our team move forward with a community plan effort, explaining that process and how it came to fruition. So as part of that, we've released a community mapping exercise that's currently on the Trinity2050.com website. I would highly encourage community members to partake in that. If it is a bit different. It's a digital mapping tool. Takes a little patience. If you do need assistance with that, the county planning department is willing to help with that, and they can get in touch with us. This exercise is critical in forming community plans. As part of this effort, it looks at all of the communities within Trinity County and allows you to select your community, zoom in, and then map what you perceive the boundaries to be. And the intent of that is that there are the defined boundaries for each of these communities is very vague. There's not much county documentation that maps these out. A lot of the times they're tied to service districts, supervisorial districts, forest boundaries, but some of the communities have a blending between each other. So as part of this, in order to create a community plan which has specific goals or policies or actions, and eventually a vision for each community, we need a defined boundary of where that change occurs. So as part of this, we're asking the members of Community County to weigh in on where do you think the boundaries are? As part of that, we're collecting feedback. We've gotten over 150 mapping responses so far. And our job is going to be compiling all of those boundaries and bringing it back to the board in September. I believe September 6th is the date. At that meeting, we're going to ask the board to review all of the feedback that's come out of that, all of the different boundaries, and action will be taken at that meeting. First, the board will determine which areas will receive community plans based on input and feedback. And that'll help us move forward with community visions. And once that decision is made on which areas will get community plans, the determination the board will make is what is the boundary for that community. As part of that, that'll lead into November. So once the board makes those decisions on September 6th, in November, the communities that are selected to have community plans, whether they are standalone community plans. Weaverville currently has one, or whether they are several communities that join together for a single community plan. We were testing that out a bit up in North County. Once that's done, we go back out to the communities in this coming November, and we start the community plan vision process, which tiers off of the countywide vision process that we're here today for. Through the fall and into the spring is where we move into phase 6. This is the meat of the general plan update. This is where we start getting into the goals, the policies, and what are called implementation programs or actions that the county will take over the lifespan of the general plan, which goes out through 2050. That is the bulk of why we're here as part of this process. Think of the policy document with the goals and policies. Okay. There'll be an extensive public review process on the general plan, and then we'll make our way into the environmental impact report. To give you a timeline of the timeframes that typically takes, once you have a public review general plan, which I would anticipate that being wrapped up for environmental review probably by the summer of next year, takes about 9 to 12 months, depending on the EIR and how quickly we can move it through review and preparation. That gives you a timeline of where the project is heading overall.
You said 9,
9 to 12 months.
and you're talking about this being available next summer, so it would be the following late spring, summer.
So adoption would happen the following.
Okay.
Within that process, as the general plan and the EIR are making their way through, we'll be doing the zoning code update. You have to have the general plan dialed in, the vision dialed in, policies, land use in order to update your zoning. So that'll happen following that. So that is where the general plan is heading. We're about halfway through the project at this point. So are there any questions of the board on the process before I move to the next slide?
I did want to clarify. So it was interesting, hearing from people that were participating in the survey about the process. And some people were saying, well, what do you mean define the boundaries? It's this. And kind of conveying to us, well, this is asking you what you think the boundaries should be and so forth. And now what I'm taking from what you just said is, and that will then feed into this board, and the board will decide formally, officially, what the boundaries are of communities in Trinity County.
Correct.
And there are implications to that from the standpoint of general planning and zoning and what we do with those and the visions and so forth that we're gathering. Are there other implications to that decision that we should just be thinking about, or that people, when they're completing the survey, should be thinking about?
Not necessarily. It wouldn't have any effect on districting. It wouldn't have any effect on service areas. Think of the boundaries as more of just defining where the policy and where perceived change could occur.
Okay.
But no other effect beyond that.
Okay.
Right now, there are conflicting boundaries of where communities are. You may have a Weaverville address, but live over the ridge. So we want to start to define those boundaries a little bit better. And then in order to provide accurate expectations moving forward about where change or where policy could occur within those areas.
Okay.
But it'll be up to the determination of the board of what those boundaries are, and then which community plans receive, or which communities receive a community plan in the end.
Okay. It's interesting. I certainly hadn't kind of closed that loop in my mind when I was looking at the survey and talking to people about it. And so now I think when I'm communicating with people, I'll try to emphasize, because I think some people even thought it was a frivolous thing. Well, why do you care what I think about what the boundaries are? Well, because you're giving input that will actually lead to a formal decision about what those boundaries are.
Correct. And everyone has a different perceived notion of where the boundary is. And that's what we want to try to hone in on, is get everyone's feedback. And it'll be interesting when we bring it back to you, because within each of these communities, we'll actually overlay all the different boundaries on one map. So you can see all the, and you'll start to see that there is some consistency, but then there's other areas that maybe are slightly inconsistent. And that'll come down to the board to determine that boundary should follow that road, that ridge, that access, and so forth.
Thank you.
I would anticipate that to be a very robust discussion on September 6th as part of that, because there's 2 actions taken. Which communities are getting a community plan? And then what are the boundaries for the communities that are selected?
And in that, which communities are getting it comes an option to combine near positioned communities into one potentially.
Correct. And that'll be up to the discretion of the board.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. And as last November, what we did is we did 10 of these workshops. There's more than 10 communities in Trinity County based on geographical location or proximity between communities. Some of them were lumped together into more regional community plans, downriver, North County, South County, but that'll be up to the board if you want to maintain that or remove certain communities or combine more into smaller plans. We looked at 10 originally, but there doesn't necessarily need to be 10. That's just an arbitrary number that we started with looking at the county.
Okay.
So the final thing I just wanted to follow up on is just where we've been and where we're heading. So we've worked with the county on several outreach engagement events. I've kind of charted them out here from the summer of last year. So we had a board meeting, focus group meetings back in June. We had a community workshop out at the TPAC. We had a booth at the fair. We had the 10 community plan workshops and the community plan initiation back in November 2022. We released the public review draft existing conditions report in March. The second round of focus groups was this June 2023. That's what initiated the discussion on the countywide vision, where they were the sounding board first before we bring it to you. We started with 2 online exercises. Those are currently up. You can comment on the draft vision and guiding principles countywide, not community specific. And the community plan mapping exercise is also live. Community plan mapping exercise will probably run for another 3.5 weeks. And we do need to close that at some point. Comments can come in all the way up until the board meeting, but in order to provide the board with an accurate representation of feedback and boundaries for you to consider and recommend moving forward with, we need to have a cutoff point in some point. Any questions from there?
Yeah, you had spoke about the robust meeting coming up in September, I think, right?
Correct.
And with the redistricting we just had a year ago, we'll say, there is probably going to be a lot of discussion about some of the areas in my district, Poker Bar, for instance. I think they consider themselves Douglas City, although they're now District 1. We'll be making, irregardless of what district you're in, through redistricting, they will be able to join, we'll say, the Douglas City group, we'll say.
They can, but that'll be at the discretion of the board of how those communities are merged, right, and where the boundaries fall.
Because you also made a good point about Weaverville and maybe being over the hill from Weaverville.
Mm-hmm.
Those folks may feel like they are Junction City people.
Correct.
And that will be the discussion that we'll be having at that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Brett, are we still talking, when you say community plans, we've talked a little bit about, there's maybe multiple communities within a quote community plan. So there could be community plans that are designated maybe more of a historic type, one for Weaverville, maybe one for Hayfork, maybe, but then there's others that we've talked about, like a regional concept of multiple communities within one regional plan. Right. Can you elaborate on that, or at least say that is that still the direction we're going?
That is, so there are currently 4 or 5 community plans right now that are existing. The thought process as part of this effort is to maintain those community plans for those communities, move them forward, update them. The remaining communities within the county will then be up to the board's discretion about whether those communities will have a standalone plan or whether they'll be merged into more of a regional plan based on size community, geographical location, or location to other communities. And that's why I talked about downriver. Several communities were lumped in there, and we held a community workshop, a regional community workshop. North County, we looked at a regional plan up toward the Siskiyou County border. And South County, we looked at a regional plan. There were other communities that we looked at that had low attendance that the board can consider maybe lumping that community in with another one as part of regional effort. It might not need its own standalone community plan. Post Mountain was one of those that just had very low turnout. Other communities like High and Palm, extremely high turnout. So that's something that we can gauge and bring forth to you for consideration as part of that. Each of those community plans, even though they stand alone right now, the existing 5, those are going to be merged into the general plan. So there'll be a chapter within the general plan. They can still be pulled out individually, but we want to make sure that this is a countywide effort and the communities all fall under the umbrella of the county. So they all have to be consistent with the countywide vision, but then within each of that, they'll have their own community vision built off of it. And that's where this coming November, after the board makes its decision on September 6th, those communities that are narrowed down will go back out to. Dates are still to be determined, but it'll be a similar process to what we did last November. There'll be nightly meetings in each of the communities. We'll report back on the board recommendation and action on the community boundary, and then start each community's specific vision and move forward with policy discussion at that point. Because through the winter is when we actually write the community plans, write the general plan, and then roll that out in the spring. A lot of work ahead. Okay, if there are any other questions, I'll hand it over to Jim, and Jim's going to walk through the vision and guiding principles exercise. I'd mentioned this is countywide, not community specific, and we'll be able to answer any questions after that.
Okay, perfect, Brent, thank you.
Thanks, Brent. Chair Cox, members of the board, my name is Jim Harnish, and I'm the principal and owner of Mentor Harnish and kind of the leader of this particular project. I wanted to, before we get into the vision and guiding principles, I want to make a couple more observations about the community plan process. And this regional plan concept is, there's no firm guidance for what community plans or area plans look like there is for a general plan. No state guidance. There's a specific plan tool that some counties actually use for their unincorporated communities. They'll do a specific plan, very detailed, deals with infrastructure and that kind of thing. But Lake County, for example, has the county divided up into 8 areas, and it covers every bit of the county, and they have an area plan for each one of those 8 areas. And they are a variation on a community plan, but there'll be maybe a dominant community with a lot of other smaller communities around. So there's no single approach here, and we'll give you some guidance on that while you're making the decision. The other thing I wanted to say is that we'll work with the county staff to come up with our own kind of analysis and observations about what we've heard, what we're seeing with the mapping exercise, and also develop some kind of criteria to help determine what constitutes a community that needs a plan. Because there are a lot of places that are communities, named places, but they may not rise to the level of being a cohesive community. There may be no central organizing spot in the community, like a school or a volunteer fire station or a community center. There may be no commercial uses there. So there are some criteria that we'll work with the county staff to kind of come up with to kind of suggest that maybe these are some considerations that you should have, excuse me, when you're trying to make that determination about, does this rise to the level of needing a true community plan? Because whether you do a community plan for a community or not, they'll still be covered by the general plan, broad address of all sorts of issues that are relevant to that, any one community in the county. So we'll try to give you as much kind of our professional thoughts about how to make that decision, but ultimately you'll be the ones that decide whether the important criteria and just in some cases, what's the history. So.
And Jim, on that point, I just wanted to say, I picked up from what Brent was saying, at least what I inferred is you could have two areas, let's say they're equally well-defined of High and Palm and Post Mountain, whether they are or not, but there was a very different level of representation, participation, opinion about what that community meant to them and what they wanted it to be. And so that might be something that you would say to us is should guide our efforts of deciding how to make some of those decisions. Is that
Exactly.
okay?
I would, my observation about Post Mountain is I went to that meeting, I drove around that place, and it's a named place, but I would never identify that as a community. It's a place, it has a lot of people there. But I didn't see, other than the volunteer fire station, there weren't places where people go and gather. There wasn't a park, I don't think. I didn't see a school. So those are the kind of things I think about as a planner, is whether or not it makes up a community that has enough cohesiveness that there are policies and programs that should be in place that are separate from the rest of the county. So
That cohesiveness is probably the word I was trying to think of. So thank you for that.
yeah.
So is that the way you describe Post Mountain? Although there's 3,000 people there per the census, the non-cohesiveness of it doesn't rise it to the community status or the designated area status?
Well, that was my initial observation from being there for 3 hours.
Okay.
So obviously that's a very limited amount of observation time. There's a lot of discussion that would go into that to add to that. But that was my initial takeaway from that.
And lack of participation in the meeting also?
Pardon?
And lack of participation in the meetings?
I feel that is less important. It's a consideration, and certainly public interest is a factor in determining whether or not there is that community cohesiveness. Again, the community identity folks have a history with the community, a commitment to the community, some ideas about how to improve their community. But if you only have 3 people show up to a meeting, it could be that it wasn't widely advertised in that location. There could be all sorts of things. I think in Post Mountain, I don't think a lot of people were there at the time. I think the harvest season was over. I think a lot of people were seasonally gone. So that probably was a factor there.
And you also have a large vocabulary difference. It's just, you know,
Yes.
Which I don't know if translator comes into it or not, but translation from Hmong to English is awful difficult.
Yeah.
And generally not, that group up there is not a participating in meeting type community.
Yeah, they probably
although
don't
there is lots of
participate in
them.
very many meetings here or the planning commission, right? It's not.
Say it again.
Because of the language barrier.
Yeah.
The Hmong community doesn't participate as much in any county events.
I would agree.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, there are some communities like that we've are in other counties that we've worked in. It's just really a big challenge to get them to participate, and their participation typically is a pretty basic level in terms of their basic community needs. So there are ways to reach out if the board feels like we need to be more proactive in reaching out to some communities that aren't typically engaged in the process. We can talk about working with the most successful approach, in my opinion, is working with social service organizations or nonprofits that are working in those communities for
health reasons or other related issues that have a connection to the community. Not just speak the language, but are trusted by the communities. So there are ways to reach out to some of these less involved communities if the board feels like that's important, maybe to that community plan effort. So, well, are we ready to talk about vision and guiding principles? We have the next slide. So an introduction to this, the vision and guiding principles is not a required component of the general plan. I'm not sure the current state guidelines, general plan guidelines say anything about it. They may mention it, but this is most contemporary general plans have a vision and guiding principles. It's I don't know, we started doing this 10 or 15 years ago, maybe, so it hasn't been all that long, but it seemed to be a great kind of organizing effort at the beginning of a process for the community and decision makers to kind of, without getting into the weeds, say, these are things that we kind of agree on. This is the direction we want to go, and these are the big issues and concerns that we have. So I think it's a really useful exercise. This involves some wordsmithing, but the real critical wordsmithing comes when we get to the policies and programs. That's where the rubber meets the ground. So I would encourage you to not be too drawn into tinkering with the words. It's important to get it right, but it's an art, most part art and part science. And when we get to looking at each of these, I kept thinking when I was rereading them that I was reminded of the phrase word salad. So we have to be a little careful. The issue is we're trying to cover a whole lot of ground with just a few words. And it can be challenging, but in the end, it's our starting point for this. So what's a vision statement? It's the kind of an ideal future. What are your aspirations for the county in very broad terms? Next slide, please. And so I guess just covered this. Why have a vision statement? It captures this big direction for the county, things that people can look at and say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We use these, the vision statement and probably more critically, the guiding principles as kind of the umbrella over all the goals, policies, and programs. They're a sounding board, so that when you prepare some policies, one question you ask is this consistent with the vision and guiding principles? Is this furthering the vision? And if it isn't, then you may consider dropping that or revising it so it does. So to me, that's the most important outcome of this is it helps us and you ultimately write and agree on the goals and policies. Programs may be a little less so because they really are a function of implementing policies. Okay, next slide. So how did we get to this point? How did we create the vision? And like I said before, it's part art and it's part science. I'm going to take I'm going to take responsibility for being the initial writer of the vision and the guiding principles. And so I'm going to tell you how these evolved and how we got to this point. For the vision, I went through every outreach activity that we did, all the summaries, the workshops, the focus groups, the county fair, and took all of the comments that people made, all the words that they put on our tapestry board that we carried around for a while, if you remember that. In the community plan meetings, we did a visioning exercise
If some of you remember where we did postcards from the future, they had each person write what they were visiting the county 50 years in the future, and what did they see? What were they telling their friends back home, what they saw, and then draw a picture of it. So we went through all of those and tried to distill common words, common phrases, common ideas, and put together, I think, 5 vision statements for the focus group to consider. And I think I also, in this, the version you have in front of you has a bunch of extra words at the bottom that were other things that seemed relevant. On the vision, each one of the 6 focus groups then had a discussion about the vision, and in some cases provided a lot of direction, and in some cases provided a little direction. And we took notes, the consultant team took notes, some folks made notes and handed them to us. In the case of the economic development focus group, they wrote a new vision, and that's the option 1 that you see in front of you. That was written by that group. We took the input and the 5 options and narrowed them to 2 options plus the one that the economic focus group did. So that's how we've gotten to the vision. I think I'll tell you about guiding principle formation too, rather than wait till we get there. So in guiding principles, it was a little bit different approach. We took guiding principle, we had identified the 6 topics, which are the focus group topics, and those are identified at the beginning of the project as being the key topical issues that the general plan should be addressing. And so we took those 6 topics and went through at least 10 or a dozen sets of guiding principles that we had developed for other general plans, predominantly county general plans, refined them based on the discussion and input that we'd had so far, what we knew about the county, and tailored them to prepared 5 to 7 options for guiding principles for the focus groups to review. And based on the discussion and input we got from them, where they really liked some, didn't like others, wanted to change words, we came up with 2 or 3 options for each of the topical areas. Ideally, if you wanted my recommendation, we'd have 1 vision statement and 1 guiding principle for each topic. And we'd have a vision statement that was not any longer than that option number 1. I think that's a long vision statement. I can tell you that in other communities we've worked, we've had a vision statement that's gone on for at least a page, and we've had 40 or 50 guiding principles. And for me, that kind of loses the purpose and relevance of the vision and guiding principles. I think they should be succinct and to the point. We have plenty of time to write dozens of goals and 100 policies in the general plan. And a lot of the times, if you start parsing through guiding principles, what you really end up doing is you're writing some goals that go onto topics. So you can, and you disaggregate by topic, a goal for active transportation, a goal for goods movement, a goal for, you can do that and still be consistent with the transportation circulation guiding principles. So that's just a word of advice. You're welcome to keep as many of these as you want. I would say 1 vision, but they could all be merged. But and this is the way I write. The shorter, the better. Succinct, clear, and not necessarily try to capture every single topic. Capture the important ones. So that's my background and how we got to this point, how we're going to talk about these. So before I talk about the exercise, how we're going to walk through these, are there questions about how we got here? Okay. So I've thought a lot about what the most practical approach is to get your feedback on this. As Brent said, we're talking to you today. We'll talk to the commission tonight. We're still getting input on the website. Our expectation is to take this input and synthesize it into, unless you tell us differently, one vision and 6 guiding principles. You may decide that that we've missed a guiding principle topic and we need to have another guiding principle on some topic that we haven't covered there, and that's perfectly fine. But we'll come back to you with what we would recommend based on what we heard from all of the input. And that's when I think your true wordsmithing might come into play, where you're going, okay, well, I like that, but I want to add this word or this phrase into this one. And we're trying to do this on a consensus basis. Would advise against taking votes, but that's up to you. You're the decision makers, but we should be able to try to reach consensus on this. So to get to that point, first I've asked the staff to give you written copy of the guiding principles, goal, vision, and guiding principles in front of you to take notes. I was telling Chair Cox that I don't really like to use paper very much. I like to stay digital, but this seemed to be an appropriate time and easiest for you to jot notes. So I wanted to get your opinion on how you want to go through these. One option is for me to read each one of the options. And so the 3 vision options, and stop and have you discuss it and give your feedback and make your notes. You're not going to make any decision, but just kind of talk amongst yourself. The second that Brent suggested a little bit ago is ask individual supervisors to read a vision statement or a guiding principle. I'm not recommending that. I'm just telling you that was another thought. But the idea is to go through the vision options first, provide some comment and direction. It may be that they're one that resonates with everybody and we're done with your input. And I suspect that you'll have a broader range of thoughts. Jot them down. I was thinking that staff could collect the paper, scan it and send it to us. Some of you may want to keep it and add to it. If you do, then I would really like for you to scan that and send it to staff within the next couple of days so we can get to work on this. So those are your options. So now, are there any questions or direction from how you'd like to proceed?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I to come back to what you were saying about the purpose of a vision statement, and I've never obviously done it for governmental stuff, but in organizations, as you say, it's meant to be somewhat of a concise statement that people can pretty easily relate to, that's either going to focus and motivate you to help make this vision a reality, and it's to help you realize that you may have started down a path that isn't in line with the vision. So it's to keep you on these rails somewhat.
Correct.
And to help you feel that's what I'm after. So is that your sense too of what you're trying to help us achieve?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. I keep using this analogy, but it's the umbrella over the project. It has to fit within or underneath the umbrella. Well, everything that comes after the vision has to fit within the vision's umbrella. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, if you're comfortable just reading and moving forward, if that's how you feel most comfortable, I would say
Sure.
do that.
Yep.
Do you think the vision statement, option 1, is a little bit long or redundant in a way?
I think it is.
I do too.
Um,
And one of the ways I see that something may be able to be cut down out of here in our community, especially in District 2, the louder it is in District 2, the more money we're making from the mill. And that mill runs 24/7. Trinity County is doing great and it's loud. But we need it. So to have a quiet, I think this isn't here somewhere, a quiet and peaceful place. If you live anywhere in Weaverville and you hear that mill going, it's the sound of success.
Yeah.
It's not particularly quiet and we're all used to it not being quiet, but to retain the peace and quiet that comes with rural setting, I can see it being outside of, maybe town, local town, but the noise from the mill is the noise of success and money
Success,
and
yeah.
growth.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So, and I think some of the other things are just inherently what you would get in a town, what you would hope for. I don't know if it needs to be actually printed down, but I think most people move to somewhere inherently for some of these things. So I do think it's a little bit redundant and somewhat long.
Okay. By the way, I think I mentioned Brent's taking notes from my end, and then you're taking notes. Well, I would say if you see one of these choices, one of the options that you like, I'd just circle it. And then if there's a word or two of noise, peace and quiet, if you like that one, but the peace and quiet phrase is problematic, just cross it out. If there are other words that you want to put in there, caret the words in. I know it's a fair amount of work on your part, but the more of that kind of information you can give us, the better. Because if we get these back and the same guiding principle is circled by 4 of the 5 board members and 4 of the 5 planning commissioners, I think we have a guiding principle that is probably going to stay. And the ones that didn't circle it, if there's some words that they didn't like about it, then we could refine that. So that's the kind of approach that we'll be taking. So would you like me to read this? Okay. Trinity County is the place where.
Jim, can I make a statement real quick? I would just ask us to keep in mind too, that when we're looking at this, it's whole of county. It's not just a particular community or particular organization. It's what we want as, whole of county, what somebody would think of as Trinity County as a whole, as these words help describe what we're looking for. Again, this is probably realistically 20 to 30 years in the future.
Yep.
As far as what we're thinking about with this general plan.
It's a plan for 2050 right now. And that's just kind of there's no magic to it. We try to pick it's satisfying one of the basic laws or requirements of general plan that is long range. You're looking out 15 to 30 years. Some plans look up 50 years, but there's no magic in that number. We're planning for the future, not 5 years down the road. Okay, Trinity County is a place where people can have a fulfilled life in a natural setting, where the opportunities for work, play, and housing are abundant. The sense of community and family is strong. People are kind. Residents feel safe and secure. Equally important is for the community to retain the peace and quiet that comes from its rural setting. The county supports a self-sustaining, resilient, and creative culture and economy with a vibrant, diverse business base. The county is fiscally responsible, environmentally conscious, and inclusive. The county offers a welcoming place for people of all ages, incomes, and ethnicities to live, work, and visit. Shall we go to number 2? Trinity County is a place where people can have a fulfilled life in a rural setting where natural and cultural resources are maintained and protected. The county is a place where opportunities for work, housing, and recreation are abundant, and strong families, kind people, safety, peace, and quiet are valued and supported. And next slide. Trinity County is a place where people can have a fulfilled life in a rural, natural setting that is peaceful and quiet, where the opportunities for work, play, housing, recreation, and cultural and natural resources are abundant. The county has a strong sense of community and family, where people are kind and residents feel safe and secure. So the common themes, right?
Yeah, there are. And you said that option one was actually written by one of the focus groups.
Yes,
And then the other two
by me.
by you, but obviously you were pulling in some of the things you kept hearing from people. You know,
Yes.
You can't help but see the safe and secure and the peace and quiet and some of those things that seem to come through a lot.
I forgot to mention, we used placemaking feedback from that project for a couple of years ago. They did a lot of visioning there, and so lots of words out of there. But so you can see, though, that collectively you start hearing these common themes of friendly, family, secure, natural environment, great place to live and work. So those kept coming up more and more. And so sometimes you're just saying them in a different way and a different structure. And then I don't have it in front of me, but there are other phrases and words that could apply there that we listed at the bottom.
So Jim, I just need a little extra clarity here because at one point I felt like I was hearing, we're going to kind of look for a consensus among us here today. At another point, I felt like I heard, we're going to turn kind of the notes that we take and thoughts that we generate, get those scanned and sent to you, and that you'll look for that consensus. And you may find that, hey, if we kind of see four people. So in my head, there's an either or, I'm not sure.
Well, I wasn't sure how the board would want to approach this, so I didn't want to restrict you. If you wanted to have some dialogue or discussion between you on some of these, that's great, but it would be perfectly fine for just to gather up the notes, have this kind of little interaction we've had, and we'll go away with that. There is a lot of content to go through, and so to be talking about each one of them could take a long time.
Right.
Which is what I was thinking would make most sense, and that's why I was thinking of writing down your comments and making observations.
I would agree. That would probably be the most expedient.
Yeah, it's up to
productive
the
way
board.
to move through. So do other board members agree with that, or does somebody have a different preference? Okay.
Okay. Well, are we ready to go on to the guiding principles?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So guiding principles are a little more specific. They're the kind of the central themes that articulate how the county is going to implement the vision. Like I think I said this before, it provides a framework for all the goals and policies that fall under that topical area. Again, they're based on the kind of feedback that we were getting. We synthesized this from the communities, but my starting point was other guiding principles that we've found to be successful other places, in places that were in mostly counties. Some of this came from Ventura County, Lake County. We didn't do them in Modoc County. That was too long ago, so we didn't do guiding principles back then. But a lot of county general plans, and then a few city plans on limited topics, because there are some topics in cities that are not relevant to counties, others that are. So it was just a process of getting a collection of initial ideas and then refining them based on all of this input. So let's go to the first guiding principle. Hazards and safety. A really important one. This is one of the dominant topics for the general plan. And by the way, I don't know if I said this before, but I think one of the really great things about the general plan is it's the only time a city or a county comes together to talk about this really broad range of issues at the same time, and balances priorities between safety, transportation, infrastructure, land use. You were talking about all these important topics at one time. This is the only time you do that. So some of this is directly an outgrowth of that, is that we're dealing with all of these topics at once. They're all important, but some, depending on the outcome, will have a higher priority for implementation. So, okay, hazards and safety. The first option: minimize health and safety impacts to residents, businesses, and visitors from human-caused hazards, such as hazardous materials, noise, air, water, and water pollution. as well as managing lands to reduce the impacts of natural hazards such as wildland fires, flooding, and geological events. The second option, provide for safe communities through resilient infrastructure, community-wide education, and effective coordination with regional, state, and federal agencies, and hazard planning that is responsive to potential climate-related natural and human-caused disasters. The second set of guiding principles is community health and health services, and we have three here. Promote economic, social, and physical health and wellness by investing in infrastructure that promotes physical activity and access to healthy foods, emphasizing healthcare, resources for seniors, and integrating public health into policies and the built environment. The second option is protect natural environments and develop healthy environments to help reduce stress, depression, and other health disparities, mutually supporting each other and performing all functions of life and developing maximum mental capacity. The third option, reduce potential and severity of short and long-term health emergencies, control the rate and extent of the spread of illness, reduce economic and social displacement, and reduce loss of life. Is this a good pace to be going
yeah.
for taking notes?
I
and
feel
stuff?
good. Is everybody else?
Okay. The third guiding principles, land use, housing, and zoning. Option one, expand available land for development, incentivize new development, get vacant, abandoned properties back into active use, increase affordable housing options such as tiny homes and accessory dwelling units, build local wealth, increase fire resiliency that includes shaded fuel breaks, and emphasize united collaborative approaches to housing challenges. The second option, maintain the unique geographic qualities of communities separated by agriculture and open space lands. Carefully plan development, including establishment of community services and facilities that balances the need for new housing with the preservation of community character. Fourth guiding principle is mobility and infrastructure. And I should stop here and say those are really two different issues. That's the way we combined this focus group. This is one of these guiding principles that probably is more susceptible to having a mobility guiding principle and an infrastructure guiding principle, if you think that would be appropriate. Okay, option one, maintain and enhance existing multimodal transportation network, infrastructure, and services to meet the unique circumstances of each community and the needs of the residents and businesses. Ensure development does not outpace the provision of services and infrastructure. Maintain law enforcement and fire protection services to protect residents and property, and enhance availability of communications infrastructure to residents and businesses. Second option, invest in public roadways, facilities, infrastructure, services, and renewable energy to promote efficiency and economic vitality, ensure public safety, and improve quality of life for all residents. And third, communities are internally connected through an efficient and safe network of roadways, bridges, transit, bikeways, and pedestrian trails and sidewalks that are connected and adequately constructed and maintained to meet the needs of residents and businesses.
So when we give you feedback on this, a part of that feedback might be if our opinion is that it would be nicer to separate them. And
Yes.
if so, you would sort of maybe bring forward a couple of different options for each, and we would pare it down then. Or you would just take that and say, we'll give you the pieces in this that we like and you separate it.
Yeah, we might just separate and say, okay, here's the mobility one and here's the
Okay.
infrastructure one.
Okay.
That would be my approach unless I heard that you wanted something, a broader thing. I mean, what I'd like to do is come back to you with a recommended set rather than any more options.
Okay. Got it.
That's my goal. And if you tell me you want some options on something, we'll do it. But I think that
No,
in order to
perfect. I get it, yeah.
get this to wrapped up, it would be best to then work with one set and then tinker with those. Add a line, add a sentence, change a word. Okay, I think this is the fifth option, or fifth guiding principle option, watersheds and natural resources. Conserve, develop, and sustainably manage the county's open spaces and natural resources, including soils, water, air quality, minerals, biological resources, scenic resources, rivers, and forests, as well as historic cultural resources, while balancing the needs of communities, agriculture, and healthy ecosystems. Those are some unusual pauses I made, weren't they? The second one, natural assets such as air quality, mountains, forests, river corridors, and soils are preserved. Energy efficiency and use of alternative modes of transportation conserve energy resources, and new sustainable energy resources are developed, providing clean and inexpensive energy. Third, the county values and protects its natural and cultural resources with expanded opportunities for residents and visitors to enjoy the county's heritage and natural setting. Recreation and entertainment opportunities such as the Trinity Alps, waterways, and state and federal parks and forests are available and accessible to all residents and visitors. And I think the last one is economic development. Yep. These were the wordy people. But they spent a lot of time working on this stuff, and I got the most notes out of any focus group for these folks, so they did a great job. So number one, local business development and employment opportunities to keep capital and growth within the community. Characteristics that support local substantive businesses are recognized, enhanced, and maintained over time, and independent businesses are attracted to the area. Second, in order to maximize benefit of local market demand and financial resources, there's a high level of continuous coordination and collaboration within the business community and with the county. County resources for economic development are distributed throughout all communities in the county. A strong focus exists on workforce development, identifying existing assets and gaps in the workforce ecosystem, building a coalition of stakeholders to strengthen the ecosystem, training the existing workforce for new industries and opportunities, and expanding the county workforce and capacity. That's a mouthful. 3, the county's economy will expand, diversify, and strengthen its role globally as a source of food and agricultural commodities, an important cannabis producer and a destination for tourists. Expanded educational opportunities provide a broad range of jobs across diverse industries, emphasizing small local businesses and startups. Excellent schools and leadership programs prepare youth as the next generation of the county's workforce. And I think we're at the end. Aha.
Remind me where we're going next.
So at this juncture, my understanding is unless we have some questions for you, we will compile what our thoughts are, hand those to the clerk to be scanned and sent to you.
Correct.
All right.
Yep.
All right.
Right. Here ends my presentation.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And appreciate being up here.
Appreciate you. Yeah.
We'll be at the planning commission tonight and
And the format there will be similar to this.
it'll be exactly like this.
Okay, great.
Great,
right.
thank you.
Jim,
Thank you so much.
Jim, can I ask one question?
Yep.
So in the past, we've had some, one-on-one kind of updates, if you will, with the supervisors. If there's some specific questions on that between now and the next meeting and as we go forward, is that still an option?
Oh, yeah,
We can-
always.
Okay.
Yeah, we can always set that up.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be
Thank you.
fine. I will be on vacation for the next 2 weeks, but
Mhm.
available. It's I wouldn't say a working vacation, but I'll just be visiting family in Ohio, and so I'll be available for Brent and I can get on. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Right. Supervisors need a break or can we move forward? So since we had some issues with folks being able or not being able to join initially, I did not, hang on, log back into my computer. I did not report out closed session from the previous meeting because I want to make sure all who were trying to participate had that opportunity. So I will do that now before we move into public comment. So from July 18th, 2023, the closed session item was 5.1, threat to public services or facilities requested action, government code section 54954.5E, threat to public services or facilities consultation with Stephanie Augusta, Homeland Security Investigation Special Agent. And the report out of that is no reportable action was taken. All right, with that, we will move into public comment. This time is for information from the public on matters not appearing on this agenda or within the consent calendar. All comments are limited to 3 minutes and must pertain to matters within the jurisdiction of this board. When addressing the board, please state your name for the record and address the board as a whole through the chair. No action or discussion will be conducted on matters not listed on the agenda. However, the chair may refer the subject matter to the appropriate department for follow-up or schedule the matter on a subsequent board agenda. Is there any public comment in the room? All right, seeing none, is there any on Zoom?
I have no raised hands.
All right,
Oh, I got a raised hand.
okay.
Rhoda?
Hi, this is Rhoda Kane from Trinity Center. My only comment would be that the agenda just became available for us to see moments ago. And so maybe we could take a little bit of time for people to be able to read the agenda and see what's on the schedule today. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have no other raised hands.
All right, to accommodate that request, we'll take a 10-minute break and resume at 10:56.
Ashley, do you?
All right, it's 10:56. Break is over. We're back in session and we are at reports and announcements. Item 2.1, item 1, report from department heads. Are there any department heads in the room? Are there any on Zoom?
I have no raised hands.
All right, item 2, report from County Administrative Officer, CEO Tahoe.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a couple items. So first, in regards to solid waste, we're working to improve gate attendant conditions at the remote sites. Communications are challenging to non-existent, as is controlling the heat and cold. Solid waste has purchased a satellite phone, portable battery power generator, and small portable AC unit for the Burt Ranch location. And all equipment is scheduled to be operational as of tomorrow. And then we will use that and evaluate the effectiveness of that and then expand as needed.
Okay.
The Forest Service visit has already been touched on, so I will not hit on that anymore. In regards to water, at the 25 July Trinity River Interested Party Technical Meeting, which was an update meeting on the overall 2021 reinitiation of consultation on the long-term operation of the Central Valley Project and State Water Project. The Bureau of Reclamation added the Trinity County proposed alternative for further analysis and review. And just as a reminder, that was the alternative that was discussed and approved by the board on the 20th of June, and we submitted that as comments. So the fact the Bureau of Reclamation recognized and accepted the county proposal for further evaluation is very positive for the county and the entire process. However, the whole process is lengthy and involves many stakeholders, but the county will continue to be a voice at the table as the process evolves over the next 18 to 24 months. Risk management and HR. During county fiscal year 22-23, risk management, with significant support from HR, continued its mission of providing effective loss prevention, safety, and training programs for county employees. We were notified that we passed our annual audit with a score of 91%, and scoring over 90% adds additional funding for safety trainings. In order to pass the audit, we must demonstrate an effective safety program through random sample and selection of employee and department head interviews, attendance at Trendell events and conferences, maintenance of complete injury and illness prevention program. 80% of supervisors, managers completed at least 3 leadership courses. Departments conducted monthly safety trainings and safety inspections performed at all county properties. So that is a very positive thing for us and our insurance coverage. And that is all I have to report at this time.
All right, thank you.
Trent, just one question. So did I hear that right? That because the team performed as well as they did, there was basically a reward of, well, then here's some more money because we see you're using it well? Is that kind of?
Not necessarily that we see we're using the money well, but we see you are implementing, in this case, safety conscious programs. So we will see more fun and to
That's
enhance
great.
those.
Congratulations.
All
Nice.
right. We finished?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Reports from members of the Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Frazier?
Okay, let's see. On July 19th, I attended the Trinity Exclusive Glen Community Action Partnership meeting that was in Weaverville this go around. Couple of important things to bring up from that meeting. Trinity County has 2 vacancies on that board. Category 2 and Category 3 board members. From Category 2 would be representing economically disadvantaged people, and Category 3 would be private enterprise. So if you know anybody that from those areas that would be interested in serving, you can either let me know or get them in contact with Trinity or with the TGC CAP. Let's see what else is there. Another issue that came up was that the LIWAP program was eliminated, which is low income water assistance program. And we had some discussion on whether or not we may be able to transfer some of Trinity's unused money from that program to Colusa County, who actually needs it. And we haven't had much interest in the water program from Trinity County. So that will be something we'll discuss in the future. Another, in the fiscal reporting side, all their grants and stuff everything's going well, except they're a little behind on the weatherization aspect, and implement that grant as quickly as they would like to on the actual work end. All right, then the 20th of July, I had a North Coast Unified Air Quality Management District meeting in Eureka. We had a presentation by Mitch Parker from PARS. Hayfork lost its burn barrel exemption, and staff's actually looking into that for me. And then one of our Chris Howard from Del Norte County also had some areas that we were questioning if we could have that somewhat changed. That's the reason Hayfork is losing the burn barrel exemption, is because the most recent census shows that there's too much population in Hayfork. The same numbers show that there are 1.3 persons per square mile in Post Mountain and 16 persons per square mile in Hayfork. So I think there's some sort of census discrepancy there. I don't know where they drew the line. Also passed a resolution to accept wood stove grant funding and CARB grants to help pay for smoke management plans for prescribed fires. And I think that's all I have to report out at this time.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Lutweiler.
Okay, for out of county travel, I was in Anderson yesterday to facilitate an ad hoc committee session for NORTEC, which is a workforce development organization supporting our area and others. In Sacramento, prior to that, for the last final session of the new Supervisor Institute. And that was, I think, one of the better sessions that we'd had, and it was the final one. And later we'll be back in Sacramento for the CSAC California level group of county representatives. So for that board meeting that takes place at the end of this month. The Airport Advisory Committee had its first meeting of the year and focused primarily on security and other priorities that were shared both by DOT leadership and by the meeting participants. And one of the things that did come up is that we do not have designated representatives from all districts, nor did we have representation from any districts other than 1 and 2. So for the rest of the board, if there's someone that you want to appoint to that committee, we'll be trying to get on a more regular schedule for meetings. And just to clarify, it's as it says, advisory committee, but I could see that Director Kokas was looking for that community input so that when he comes to the board to share what he thinks we should be doing about the airports, he is reflecting their input. So that's kind of its intent. And there were a number of people there that were not the 2 designees because they were interested from a public input standpoint. And we had a good open discussion, but it would be great if we had that formal representation from each district so we don't let those airports get kind of ignored. And it was mentioned, the only other thing of note was I was in several of the sessions with Congressman Huffman and his associate John Driscoll. And I thought what was most interesting to me was comments that I heard from them saying that they felt more, not necessarily their exact words, but the meaning of it, more momentum and positive energy during this visit than in their last visits to Trinity County. So they sensed a change taking place and they sensed it as a very positive one. And I thought that was really encouraging to hear. That's it.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Gogan.
Yes. I attended, actually, I'll let Heidi talk about that. On the second day of the interested parties meeting we had about the Trinity River Division and the Sacramento, or us not being included in Sacramento or the Central Valley Project. Congressman Husband sent a letter that we approved that backed up pretty much all the things that we wanted to have in there. So we're grateful to have that letter. And we also got to meet with him. I met with him yesterday morning with Jamie from the high school or the school district. We did talk about the all-weather track and other things related to schools. And one other thing I would like to bring up is that the Trinity County Fish and Game Commission is kind of falling apart right now. It's a fairly important commission because it does receive funds from fish and game violations, and those funds go towards the fish and derbies. The Fish and Game Commission funds 2 or 3 fish and derbies annually. So we have to try to prop that commission back up. I think we're down to 3 or 4 members now, and we do need a secretary. And that secretary is a paid position. So if anybody out there would like to join the Fish and Game Commission, we could certainly use a few more members and a secretary. I will let Heidi talk about the rest of our visit with Congressman Huffman. Yeah, the dinner portion's fine.
Yes, it was nice to have a visit with our congressman. We did have a meal together, Trent and Gogan and myself, and we had discussions regarding the flows in the river and the lake levels and how all those need to work together to sustain our community as from a holistic standpoint. So that was it was just very nice to hear his concurrence with some of the things that we have brought to him and his willingness to support us in that. So I was grateful for that. Yesterday, along with Trent and some other partners in the U.S. Forest Service, I went along on the tour for the Big Ranch project and the portion that reaches over Hennessy Ridge and down into the South Fork River drainage. I'm really looking forward to those projects moving forward and hope that they are fully funded. I think it will make an enormous impact in the positive sense for the folks that travel over the road that runs from High and Palm to Underwood. I think it'll be great for that area to be have the fuels reduced, and then also for some surfacing on that road. And then also because a lot of the roads that we are looking at are also roads that are used for emergency purposes. It will be really valuable to have those cleared and able to be traversed in the event of an emergency. In addition to our time talking about the water and the projects, I also had an opportunity to visit with the congressman regarding the future hopeful recognition of the Nuralmuk tribe and the Sinungwe tribe by the federal government. I believe it would be very, very beneficial for all peoples if the local tribes were formally recognized. And I think that it would also add voice to several of the issues that are always pending in this county, especially around our water. So it was nice to have a conversation with him about that. And it's something that I would hope in the future we could potentially have those tribes come before the board and give an update on their current status of how they're moving forward with the potential for federal recognition. I attended NACO in Austin, Texas, for a fun note. It was approximately 104 degrees and it rained. So it was really hot. That was the dominant thing. But otherwise, outside of that, I tried to spend my time going to the seminars and the workshops that were focused predominantly around disaster relief and response in the areas of wildfire, and then also mental health and drug abuse situations in rural communities. As an attempt to bring what I go there to learn home, I do collect information, tangible information, business cards and so forth. And my hope is to put those packages together and work with Trent to get that information out to our department heads so that we can possibly begin to look into some of the resources and opportunities that are provided simply because we are members of NACO, and just have the opportunity to look at what other counties are doing and where success is happening. So I was really grateful to have that opportunity to go there. I also sit on the Rural Action Caucus in the Western region. So I was able to participate in the approval of different letters and requests to Congress as the Farm Bill moves forward. So that's helpful for our communities, especially as I mentioned before, in the area of fuels reduction, timber harvesting, and the utilization of our forest lands for multiple use. And then also came home, got to be home for one day and left again for CSAC, attended with Rick. We've both completed our supervisor training. And then also during that time, we were introduced to countless numbers of folks that their businesses partner with CSAC, providing different resources and services to the counties that are members of CSAC. And I think that there's quite a few things out there that may add to our employee packages. As we have a retention problem, they have several things that are kind of like stack-ons that would just really help us possibly build our retention capacity in the county by offering these additional resources to our employees. And let me look real quick. Oh, and then on a local note, I just want to extend thank you to the solid waste and to our CAO for working with Julie at our Burt Ranch dump site. It really did matter to our community, the conditions that she was working in, and not only the community, but Julie is very grateful for our efforts in that. And I'm hopeful and looking forward to see how we can improve those in other transfer sites as well. But that really did matter. And I'm grateful on behalf of the Downriver community that those things are moving forward. So thank you for that. And that's all.
All right, thank you. On July 19th, I did attend the Economic Development Workshop that Supervisor Lutweiler and the Economic Development Corporation that has been established that he is interfacing with put on. I will let him speak to that in the Economic Development ad hoc report out, but that was productive and very much appreciated. I had an update meeting with Ayla Tucker, the PG&E Public Information Officer. I just do want to give another shout out. I know we've kind of celebrated this a little bit. It was upcoming, but really finalized at the Forest Service provided barbecue, the signing of our Good Neighbor Authority.
Yay.
And just want to say a huge thank you to Director Kokos and David Kolbeck. So David really did the heavy lifting and interfaced with Director Kokos for direction and clarification. And that was an enormously heavy lift. And having that signed and completed is such a win for the county. And I feel like we all need to celebrate that together. The supplementary project agreement is still being revised with small modifications. And, just the little extra time that's taking, it really makes sense when you watch what a tiny needle has to be threaded between the requirements for what the Forest Service needs to see, what the county needs to see. It is not an easy task at all, and they are working tenaciously to get that done. And again, just to reiterate, the beautiful part of that is the collaborative spirit and the collective vision both parties have to try to find that sweet spot that satisfies both and benefits both. So we await that, and that will be another moment to celebrate, because then that's money on the ground ready to go to work. And then the last thing I had mentioned, that there was interest in some of our North State rural counties reaching out collectively to Cal EPA Secretary Yana Garcia. And so yesterday I did reach out to her personal assistant, and I thought I would be the last to the table or somewhere in the middle, and apparently I'm the first to the table. She hadn't heard anything of it. So I kind of described what the request was. I have personally spoken to one other North State supervisor and left messages for the other three, await their responses, and just really hope that Secretary Garcia will entertain a conversation there. So more on that as it develops.
And that's with whom? I'm sorry.
She is the secretary for Cal EPA, so Environmental Protection Agency. So basically the conversation at RCRC was such that there are initiatives being put forward and direction kind of moving in ways that is going to be really difficult for different industries here, and things that supervisor felt like if she could come and see firsthand what those implications are, it would help her to perhaps more globally frame those initiatives that she feels are important, and have a true sense of what the impact would be to industry in these areas. So specifically, I've already spoken to general manager of PUD And he said he absolutely could entertain her for part of a day and show her specifically how some of those implications will be really difficult. That is the end of my report.
I have just one follow-up thing on what you commented on. I forgot about the PG&E conversation, which I had as well. And one of the things that struck me when we were talking was she said there had been a lot of inquiry about people wanting to share in getting things in the ground while they're doing this underground work. And yet they had made that available and nobody's taking them up on it. And I kind of got the sense that it's in part because of, well, if you want to participate, you also participate financially and maybe nobody has the money. But I just know that that's been discussed here in this boardroom before as well. And it was interesting to hear her give that update.
Well, it was, and she and I had extensive conversation on that because the whole impetus of the broadband project, their kind of theme is dig once. So if there is a ditch going in, everybody needs to be in that ditch at that time to save money globally. But that was the same outcome in the conversation that she and I had is, well, you're going to share cost as well. And so while you would love to be able to do that, it just may be that it is prohibitive.
Yeah, I think her estimate was $3.8 million a mile.
I didn't recall that, but I recalled it being large. So yes. All right, we will move on to reports from ad hocs. Trinity County Water ad hoc. I'm sorry, I'm at the water ad hoc. If you have anything to report out.
We talked about most of that with Congressman Huffman and the first and second day of the interested parties meeting that we had last 24th and 25th. We were on top of it. This is a big time for Trinity County. It's going to be a long haul, but we are in the hunt. We have some good people working on it, and we're at kind of the fork in the road right now. We're not sure which way to go, and it's going to take some good decision making to get to the right fork, but we will get there. So we are on top of this. This is a huge thing for Trinity County right now, and not to be taken lightly. And everybody is on deck and on hands and working on this right now. And we'll continue to work on it till we get this thing right. It may take, I don't know, 3, 5, 7, 8 years, but we will. It's not. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But we'll be there till the end.
Okay, very good to hear. And thank you to our ad hoc, to our CAO, and other interested parties who are working tenaciously on that. So, all right, cannabis ordinance ad hoc.
We don't have a lot to report from cannabis ordinance ad hoc this meeting. One thing that will be changing moving forward, we're going to change our ad hoc days from Fridays to Thursdays to relieve some stress from cannabis staff. Other than that, it's lately mostly just been staff legwork that's going on in the cannabis ordinance world.
Okay, thank you. And then from our economic development ad hoc.
As Chair Cox noted, we had our first public workshop. We had, I think, between 30 and 40 participants, which was great. I would have been disappointed with less than 20 and surprised at 40, and we were pretty darn close to the 40. We met for 2 hours. It was a lot of engagement because we were trying to gather input both on what ideas people had for economic development in Trinity County, but also their input on which were the highest priorities for us to try to invest in. And part of that prioritization was which did they think would be the best fit for some funding that's going to be available to us here soon. The other part was who's willing to step up and support them, because an idea can be popular, but if nobody's going to step up and make it happen, then it doesn't really matter. And there was such a good momentum in that meeting that people said, we want to meet again and we want to meet soon. So we stay ahead of this SURF funding opportunity. It's a community economic resiliency funding that'll be taking place in the next few months. And so we have another meeting scheduled next week on the 9th from 5:30 to 7:30 in this room. And we will pick up a little bit where we left off. I'll have been in a steering committee meeting for SURF funding that day. So I'll be able to bring more updates. We'll gather some more ideas. We'll do some final polling, if you will, about priorities and support. And then we will actually start to talk about next steps. How do we really get ready with really a good selection of potential ideas that we can put forward? And it was also interesting that when we were meeting with Congressman Huffman, he was interested to hear all of this and weighed in on some opportunities for federal funding, different from the SURF funding that we were looking for, that he thought might help support some of our specific ideas. And he did offer to write letters of support at our request for those initiatives. So it's great to have that level of support behind us and that insight into the federal funding, which has not so much been on my radar, at least, because I'm just not as aware of it. So it was good.
Good. I guess I would follow up on the economic development to note that we do need to hear back from our RCRC staff member, Bob Burris, on any of his recommendations that I was supposed to have received by now and haven't. So I'll just touch base with him and find out where that is. But it almost feels like there's so much momentum that's here right now. It's really positive and really exciting, encouraging, and such a wonderful public-private partnership that we see going on there. The feedback that I've had from folks following the economic development meeting is they are so delighted at the cohesive, comprehensive folks. I mean, everybody working in and knowing what page others are on.
Nice.
So, yes,
Great.
so thank you for that. All right, we'll move into the consent calendar. These items include routine, non-controversial matters and will be acted upon by the board by one roll call motion. If a member of the public has any questions or comments on an item on the consent calendar, they may provide them now. A member of the board or staff may request an item be pulled and considered separately. I'm going to first hand this over to CEO Tuthill for consideration or comments on item 3.5.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to pull 3.5. We will continue to work the proper process, and the Haymark Water Board will go through the proper nomination process and submit names, and we will put that on the next, as soon as we can, the next agenda item, but we just need to pull that completely for today.
Okay, and I'm a little bit out of order. I apologize. I need to open this up for public comment and then ask board members if there's any item that needs to be pulled. So opening public comment, is there any in the room? Seeing none, is there any on Zoom?
I have no raised hands.
All right, thank you. With that, are there items that other board members would wish to pull for separate consideration? All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion less item 3.5.
I'll move to approve the balance of the consent agenda.
By Supervisor Frazier, second by Supervisor Lutweiler.
Supervisor Frazier. Aye. Supervisor Lutweiler.
Aye.
Supervisor Gogan.
Aye.
Supervisor Harris.
Aye.
Chairman Cox.
Aye. County matters. These items include non-routine or controversial matters and are listed alphabetically by department. A member of the board or staff may request that an item be heard out of order. Does anyone have need to change the order? All right, seeing none. Item 4.1, Board of Supervisors. Discuss and or provide direction on the appointments of the Northwest California Resource Conservation and Development District. No fiscal impact. Supervisor Lutweiler.
Yes, thank you. I think I mentioned this the last meeting. It was one of those things that we couldn't really discuss until we had it formally on an agenda. And what happened is at the North Coast Resource Partnership meeting that took place a few weeks ago,
Just real quick, I need a point of clarification.
Yes.
Sorry. On the agenda, it's the Northwest California Resource Conservation and Development District, but it was to my knowledge that you went to the North Coast Resource Partnership meeting.
that's correct.
So they're different. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I was remembering.
And we have had a little bit of lack of clarity on that just through discussion. So I would have to defer to council because the wording is different, but the intent was such, what do we do?
You're fine to move forward on this. There is provision that says if there's a minor mistake in the agenda, as long as it's corrected on the record, you can move forward on the item. So
All
I'm,
right.
I'm comfortable proceeding forward with that clarification, but thank you.
All right.
Okay,
thank
sorry.
you.
Yeah, I just needed to make sure I was.
Yep,
keeping
perfect.
down the
All right.
track.
Do we
This is
also
the
have
North Coast.
alternates and-
It's the North Coast Resource Partnership.
So let me back up prior to your meeting and the question that happened. For clarity, on February 7th, we brought this committee forward again. When the committee assignments were made on January 3rd, it was not realized that this committee is allowed 2 Trinity County supervisors as voting members. The board appointed 1 supervisor as primary. Originally, that was Supervisor Gogan, and 1 supervisor as the alternate, which was Supervisor Lutweiler. And the board needed at that time to fill the second primary voting position. And on February 7th, we appointed Supervisor Carpenter Harris to that. So at this time, it stands that Supervisors Gogan and Carpenter Harris are primary. Supervisor Lutweiler is an alternate, but as an alternate, he attended this meeting. And now your story continues.
So yes, because of conflicts that kept the primaries from attending, I was in attendance. It's a great organization doing wonderful work, and we absolutely need to be a part of it. And I was able to represent us as the alternate. They followed up with outcomes of some of the decisions that we made there, some of which that I put forward to request my participation in ad hoc committees. When I checked with county council about that, because I was concerned about 3 of us showing up at meetings and things like that, I think the main thing that kind of came from it is, yeah, we have to be careful about 3 at a meeting. Also, if the primaries are attending, then there is no funding for reimbursing of expenses for the alternate to attend. So in the end, I want to make sure that we're well represented in this function. I have no, sense of ownership. I'm not trying to displace anybody, but I do want to make sure that the people that are assigned to it do want to participate. They will be participating, and then I could, if that's the outcome, then I can share back to Karen Gaffney, who's the person kind of taking the lead from staff on this. That we're going to remain with our setup as we have. If there's another time when our primaries can't be there, I'll be there. But in absent that the primaries will be there, and they should be the ones considered for ad hoc committees at their interest. So that's kind of where I was, and we just couldn't talk about it until we had it on the agenda.
Is there any way with a committee that has a primary and 2 alternates that the alternate, I'd like to have Rick there, alrighty, get paid for out of county travel?
This one is actually 2 primaries and an alternate, rather than an alternate,
Okay, I thought you said,
rather than a primary and 2 alternates.
so both primaries will get paid, say it's me and you. Okay, that's fair.
Well, then actually the primaries are you and Heidi.
Yes, and I would like to remain as the primary on
Okay.
this,
So
Got it.
Supervisor Gogan, do you also wish to remain as a primary and potentially serve as an ad hoc? Or is there a consideration that you might like to become the alternate?
No, I will stay as the primary with Rick as the alternate and Heidi as the other primary.
Okay, all right.
We don't need a motion or anything, right? Because that's a chair assigned.
That's correct. You're good to go on that. The question I heard that I didn't hear an answer is, do you want to have a budget adjustment come back to allow for the alternate also to have their mileage reimbursed as a result of that? That's doable. It just has to be done through another action.
And my question there though would be if Rick went as an alternate to vote on an ad hoc, if he's not a voting member, how would that even work? So I would think that either one of our primaries would have to step down and give Rick that spot, or they're going to have to step up and take the ad hoc position. This is how I would see it moving forward.
Well, the ad hoc is advisory, so wouldn't be taking a formal vote. So if an item from the ad hoc were to come back to the full board, the primaries would be the ones voting on it. Rick would just be presenting more as staff, as ad hoc staff. So it from a legal perspective, it's completely doable. But again, we do run into the issues of having a quorum of our board there, which we've discussed. And then the issues of the way the policy is written is that the alternate doesn't If the two primaries are going, the alternate doesn't get compensation for it. And so again, that can be changed. I just want to make sure we're consistent. So it's for the board to discuss.
Okay. And just so from my standpoint, I wouldn't see a need for me to attend if the primaries were there. I think the primaries were assigned by a very thoughtful process that said the natural resources people, and let's get as much of that cohesively assigned so that they can work across boundaries, if you will, and across organizations affecting that. So I think the primaries assigned are great. I'm glad to hear they want to participate. Again, I think this is very important. I will always be there if you can't be there. I don't need to be there if you are there. And I did share through Ashley to address any Brown Act concerns, all of my notes from that meeting. So you have my notes from that. And I suppose, council, that as long as, even though it might be the three of us at some point separately discussing this, but if Heidi had questions for me and Liam had questions for me, if it's just to understand my notes and takeaways from that meeting, that would be okay or not? Just dancing this Brown Act.
That is the
Dance.
Brown Act dance. So if both Heidi and Liam know your position, then you have violated the Brown Act, but you're not on the commission as a voting member. So there would be an exception to that. So you would
Okay.
be fine. If they're just getting clarification on your notes, you would be fine.
Okay.
If they're hearing what you would vote if you were to be sitting in that position, we would have a problem.
Okay.
Which it
Nope.
sounds like it's not going to happen.
Right. So that's it. I'll just offer that. If you do have questions about my notes, because I know they're not always as intuitive to others as they are to the person taking them. Okay. You can certainly reach out. And otherwise, I will just let Karen Gaffney know of this outcome. And then I'm sure she'll be reaching out to you to see if you want to participate in those ad hocs. I think I forwarded the information of what those were.
Okay, thank you. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for attending for me. I had something that had been on the books for well over a year that had already
Yeah.
captured that piece of my schedule. So I
Thank you.
do appreciate you going.
Yeah. I appreciate that we have this level of teamwork, but one can't be there. We're going to be there because we're making sure Trinity County is represented.
Yes.
And I see that across the whole board. So I'm happy to participate in. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item 4.2, County Administrative Officer, discuss and or provide direction to staff regarding the approval of the $96,360 allocation of LATCF funds to join the National Center for Public Lands Counties. $96,360 from the Local Assistance and Travel Consistency Funds, CAO Ted Hill.
Thank you, Chair. So during the last meeting, the board received a briefing on this topic from the CSAC CEO. And at this point, we are asking for a vote on whether we want to contribute the 1% that organization has requested from all counties throughout California, if we want to participate in the National Center for Public Land Counties organization that they are establishing. Based upon the presentation you heard, it is obviously up to the board. From my perspective as a CAO and how the funding and priorities have fallen out with our initial 4.8 of the LATCF funds, and the fact that we are going to receive the second round of our 4.8 funds, I think we would see some benefit from this as a county, and this is a good, viable option to expend these funds.
Okay, questions of board members?
I have a comment. Do I need to wait for a motion or?
This is for questions, clarifying questions at this point. All right. I do have one clarifying question. My understanding from Graham when he presented was that he and of course Supervisor Carpenter Harris and others were headed to NACO, and that at NACO, they were going to be making the decision as to whether or not they were going to be able to go ahead and establish this based on interest from the potentially participating counties. So that now having already occurred, do we need to know the outcome of what that even was? Or
I
did
can
I
clarify.
misunderstand? Thank you.
Because I met with Graham at the Supervisor Institute. He was there and gave a great presentation about CSAC, and we spoke separately about this particular thing. And they are basically moving forward. So they had $4 or $5 million, I think, already from people. And so they are now just kind of fine tuning exactly what it's going to look like, but they're moving forward. And so our piece would basically be our putting our skin in the game with them, just along with the others, but it's not a go, no go anymore. They're going.
Okay, follow-up question to that. If you know the answer, if you said you've got 4 or 5 million already and our portion is almost 1, that indicates to me that they only have 4 or 5 or fewer other counties also participating at this time. Do you know if that number is higher? Because what they were
4
asking,
million.
right?
We're giving 100,000. You're saying?
Oh, million. I'm sorry, I lost to 0.
Yeah.
Happens. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they have quite, I think they have a fair number already committed and have actually transferred money over to CSAC to hold for them. And then I think there's others that are still kind of going through like we are, formally making the decision.
Right.
But they had enough that they were moving forward and it's pretty strong representation.
Okay, thank you. That answers my questions.
Yeah.
Any other?
And I was just going to point out too, as Graham noticed or gave in his presentation, is this is a one-time endowment. It's not an annual funding, an ongoing request. It's a one-time endowment that they plan to operate off of for the duration of this entity.
All right, at this time we will open public comment. Is there any in the room? All right, seeing none, any on Zoom?
I have no raised hands.
All right, close public comment, bring it back to the board.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
I will second.
Right, motion by Supervisor Lutweiler, second by Supervisor Gogan. Is there any further discussion?
I just want to say that both at NACO and at CSAC, it was apparent that the rural counties are getting behind this opportunity, just to make sure that our voices are, that the collection of all of our voices are heard when we go after PIL funding and other things. So I think this is a good idea.
Certainly. And as a follow-up comment really to our board reports in this arena, this was my ask of Congressman Huffman in my conversations with him, and he was very much behind it, realized he called it responsibility. So that's encouraging as well. All right, we have a motion in a second.
Supervisor Gogan,
Aye.
Supervisor Lutweiler,
Aye.
Supervisor Carpenter Harris,
I
Supervisor Frazier,
Aye.
Chairman Cox.
Aye. Great. Human Resources, item 4.3, take the following actions regarding the reorganization of the county's grants and housing division. Create Special Revenue Fund 118, Housing. Adopt a resolution delegating signature authority on all active grants and housing-related agreements and documents. Move 2 housing case manager allocations to a housing division under Health and Human Services effective August 1, 2023, and delete all positions allocated to the Grants Division under County Administrative Officer effective August 1, 2023. No known fiscal impact. So I think you're wearing dual hats this morning, Director Hamilton. We've got an HR component and a Health and Human Services component. So you have the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, Chair, members of the board. So I'm here with the HR hat on this morning. And with the resignation of staff in June, we felt it was best to kind of bifurcate grants and housing. So grants would remain in the administration office, and then housing would move into Health and Human Services, where that is direct client service delivery. And we bring to you these items for approval so that Health and Human Services can continue in, actually, they're given their ability to function in a financial and signatory way.
Okay. All right. Any clarifying questions from board members? All right.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I followed that. So we're separating the two, and you just walk me through that one more time. I was reading and listening, and somehow it still didn't go.
Yes. So grants is a larger global business operation that would stay in county administration. Housing and housing related programs are more of a direct service delivery component that would fit nicely within Health and Human Services and the programming that is there. And in order to separate, we have to look at creating a new budget that goes with housing because they're all in one. So we're bifurcating those out. And then having a resolution that gives signature authority on housing related grants that serve those populations. And then of course, the restructuring of the allocations. So where they had 5 employees assigned, we're reducing that to 2 that will move to Health and Human Services.
And Trent, was this, the grant aspect would report directly into you?
Correct.
And the housing would report into
Health and Human Services.
Health and Human Services?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Liz, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we had some elements of housing already in HHS to provide direct service to clients. So there was, instead of having 2 separate areas doing similar type of work, because some of those clients were served by both entities, putting them all under one area, we feel there's going to be some efficiencies gained as well and provide better service to the clients who receive these services from an overall housing perspective.
Okay. Great.
All right. If there are no further questions from board members, I will open public comment at this time.
Good morning, Deidre Brower from Junction City, and I'm here today on behalf of the North Fork Grange, which is a nonprofit based in Junction City. We do a lot of work there. We do scholarships. We have the SNAP nurses set up shop there when they were doing COVID testing and immunizations. We have jiu-jitsu classes offered there. We have the Forest Service has rented from us when they're there when there's big fires and they need a place to be. They have too many staff. So we do a lot of things there. And some of those things include maintaining the park, which is county park, but our members take on the cleanup of it and maintaining and opening bathrooms and things like that, and highway cleanups. And I'm here today because we have been working for a really long time with the county on a couple of grants. And one of those is for a much needed bathroom remodel. If anyone has been there, you can attest that you really need new bathrooms, and a stage for the park for because a lot of music events happen there and other things like that, and it's a lot of work. So we've solidified these grants, and we worked really hard with Susie. She was great. She's very knowledgeable, getting back to us really quickly. And so we are now finally in the phase where both of these jobs are going out to bid. And so we just want to, kind of wave our hand and make sure that, we're here and hopefully keep those things moving forward in a timely manner. There's a lot of requirements. There are 2 different types of grants. And so there's different things that need to be done for each of those. And so our concerns are just timeliness because they're getting the time to complete them is shortening. And so we want to make sure that we have somebody that is responsive and can help us to get those things needed and our contractors paid and things like that. And I'm sure there's other community organizations that are also in a similar position as us. So I just wanted to say thanks for putting this on the agenda. And I look forward to working with the administrative department. So thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Make a comment
Please.
about that.
Mhm.
So thank you for bringing that up. We are in fact the specific 2 projects that you mentioned, one, the ADA accessible upgrades. We are in fact working with Tanner Wolverton and working through those, and we will continue to do that. So please continue to work with us, and we will, all grants that are out there right now, we will continue those on and make sure that those projects do in fact get not only paid, but they get finalized and completed. That'll be the most important part. Thank you.
All right. There is no further comment in the room. Any on Zoom?
Veronica.
Good morning. This is Veronica Kelly-Albies with the Weaverville Douglas City Parks and Recreation. And I'm going to sort of ride along with Deidre. We are currently working with per capita funding through the grant process of the county. Susie was our support staff on that. She was fantastic, and we appreciate all that she did. But there are other projects that we continue to look for funding for in a partnership fashion with the county. Again, the pool is owned by the county, but it is managed by the Weaverville Douglas City Parks and Rec. One of my favorite things. So we continued those upgrades there. And so I'm sure I'll be reaching out to CAO with the final funding on that. But as things come up, I want to just reiterate that our Parks and Recs is successful because of its partnerships with the county. And I'm hoping to see those continue. But we do have some projects already looking for funding, as I said. So I just want to say, put us, like she said, wave our hand, remind you that we're here and the partnerships that we've spent a long time and many years building with the county. We would like to see those continue as we move forward. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have no other raised hands.
All right, thank you. We will close public comment and bring it back to the board.
I move to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Lutweiler, second by Supervisor Gogan. And I think if anything, CEO Tail, I mean, you and I shared a little head nod as our last public commenter was speaking. Could you perhaps just give some assurance to folks who are, and anytime there's change, someone leaves, we had things that had inertia had been overcome and momentum was there and there is concern. So perhaps we could just give them some reassurance.
Yes, Chair. So specifically on the last commenter about the Hayfork pool, we are tracking that. We're about the last.
Weaverville
status-
pool.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we will continue to work those. I've got a full list of all of the outstanding grants. We've been able to go through those, and we are making progress, I believe, with all those. As with any change, there has probably been a few little hiccups and some bumps in the road, but we are committed to working through those and committed to, finding all available options for funding resources on behalf of, the county and any other organization in the county that would benefit from that funding.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right, we have a motion and a second.
Just one comment, just want to share. Graham, who was here with us, the CEO of CSAC, at that same meeting last week, he was sharing again the grants initiative that CSAC has launched, which one of the great things is it offers like a fractional access to grant writing resources. But I think their lowest end package is $250,000 a year, something like that. So it's still not a cheap date, but it is perhaps still more affordable for some than going out and trying to build their own team. So that is something that continues to be available to us. But I'd also heard from some nonprofits saying there's so much money we know is out there that we just can't get our hands on because we don't have anybody to do grant writing. And like we're hearing here, there's organizations that are out doing great work on our behalf, but they need our support. One of the things I asked him about, and he put me in touch with two people, is for them to bring us a curriculum to teach grant writers here in Trinity County, so that they would come to us, people could raise their hands and say, hey, I'm willing to invest my time and energy into learning enough to be able to support our own grant writing initiatives, not taking the heat off of us being able to support those great efforts, but at least it could be an additive thing. So I don't have anything to report other than he acknowledged it, he acted on it, and he's put me in touch with two people that are supposedly going to try to make it happen.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, that's exciting. All right.
Supervisor Gogan,
Aye.
Supervisor Lutweiler,
Aye.
Supervisor Carpenter Harris,
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier,
Aye.
Chairman Cox.
Aye. All right, with that, we do not have a closed session today, so this concludes our August 3rd special meeting. Thank you.